addition to our department. I got a call from a respected colleague a couple of years ago who said, Sachs, you must accept Mr. Sharma into your department as a doctoral student. He's an amazing person. No one knows as much about the tribal people as Rajasthan as he does. And not only that does he know a lot about them, but he's very actively involved with them. In my seminar, we were just talking about collaborative anthropology, and this is somebody who really does collaboration. He's worked all around India with a number of different so-called tribal groups, and has a great knowledge of them, but particularly in the desert areas of Rajasthan. He spent many, many years with these people. Yesterday we were having a discussion about them, and he revealed to me with a good mixture of modesty and pride that he had actually been requested by one of these groups to serve on their panchayat, that is their traditional council, which makes decisions about it. So this is something that's kind of unheard of, to ask a foreign person or a non-tribal member to sit on the panchayat, but his relations to them are so close that that's actually happened. It's something very special, and it suggests the deep knowledge he has of these people. He's been here about a year or so now.
Yes.
And we've been working on this proposal, and I think that what we have today is his first go at sort of publicly presenting the research that he, or the dissertation he plans to do on this topic. And I look forward very much to it. I think it should be quite interesting.
Yes. Thank you so much, sir, for your kind introduction and regards. Hello everyone, my name is Ashwani, and I'm grateful to each of you for being here. Thanks to the South Asian Institute, and special thanks to Lynn Nagel and so on for tireless working to organize this wonderful event. And it's rare to find such a remarkable person like Dr. Sachs in academia, and his ideas and knowledge are exceptional. And one of the greatest Urdu poet, Zafira, once wrote, आने वाली नस्लें तुम पे रश्क करेंगी हम अश्कों जब उनको ये समझ आएगा कि तुमने फिराक को देखा. That means future generations will be jealous of you when they know you saw firak. So in the same way, future generations will be jealous of you when they know you saw William Sachs. Thank you, sir. Today's talk, Moving to Heal, why mobility is central to nomadic healing practices. Actually, today's talk is an extended version of my previous one, mobility and healing practices among nomadic communities. In this talk, I would like to explore why mobility is essential to their healing practices. Is mobility limited to physical movement, or does it encompass more? That means, is it just a physical movement to migrate to place, or is there incorporate other things as well? I will also explore how does mobility shape their kinship structure and provide them with both effectiveness and legitimacy. And finally, how does mobility influence their worldview or cosmology? But before diving into these ideas, I would like to provide some background on nomads and their way of life, so that you can better understand nomadism and healing practices. Yes, my understanding is based on ethnographic research. As participant observer, I just work as their day-to-day life and just take part in daily routine works, their sorrows and their happiness, interviews and commentary from their knowledgeable person or elder person. I also use historical records like archival sources, buddies, folk tales, oral history, and I also use that geographical approach to understand their mobility pattern and landscape. But finally, after joining this prestigious institution under guidance of Professor Sachs, I am learning healing practices through the lens of critical medical anthropology. Often, friends, colleagues, and others ask me how many years you have been working with these nomadic groups. my first memory of the nomadic communities is from when I was a small child, and different nomadic these communities came and set up their dera at outskirts of the village. Sometimes puppeteer, sometimes acrobats, healers, pastoral herders, and I used to play with their children. And and the villagers always greeting them with their fair share and with respect. And I remember their vibrant clothing. The man with big turban and long beards and mustaches, and women wear embroidery dress and like this. And in the evening time there was a campfire, and with people gathered around, they share food, villagers and the nomads. So it's a kind of relationship. It's not just a give and take, it's not just a service. But some elder women feel jealous because their husbands often spend entire days and night at the dera. And out of this jealousy, they spread rumors. You don't go to the dera. If you go to the dera or to meet the nomads, so the women there are magicians, jadugar, and the common guy. So different types of things you can listen through their interactions. I hope you all are familiar with this map. This is India, although I'm working in Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, some parts in Chhattisgarh, Gujarat and Haryana. But especially for research, I am basically focused on only in Rajasthan. And in this map you can see the pink color. This is the Thar Desert, the great Indian desert. And the Thar is an arid region in the northwestern part of Indian subcontinent, and it is the world's 18th largest desert. And about 85% of the Thar Desert is in India and about 15% in Pakistan. And Thar is the land of many nomadic and indigenous communities. So, who are nomads? Why do they move? And what is the relationship between their mobility and healing practices? So the nomads are the people who migrate from place to place. They do not have fixed settlement. But that migration from place to place is not arbitrary, but they have some connections. They have relationship with the local patterns, the local settlements. It's not just like here, there, everywhere. But they have some connections, they have structures. And they usually live in groups, 8 to 10 families, sometimes 12 or 15, like that. So it's and often organized by clan. So it's a clan system. And generally their deras, they live at the outskirts of the village or the city. And they have unique language, culture, their eating patterns, their oral history, their mobility patterns, and each nomadic community represents a special kind of knowledge system or knowledge understanding. For example, the puppeteer, they work as an oral historian. They throw puppet. The Banjara community, we known in the history like a trader and transporter, but they expert of how to construct the water bodies. For example, ancient water bodies, step wells or ponds and lakes in desert area. And their whole understanding comes through the experience, which they gain through constant mobility. So their knowledge or their experience or understanding is also based on this mobility. And they are syncretic faith. We cannot divide the nomadic life or indigenous identity on the basis of Hindu, Islam, Sikhism or Buddhism. So sometimes they use some traditions from the Hindu community, they adopt some tradition from the Islam, Sikhism, Buddhism, and their own belief, which is separate from the entire system, other religions, especially the dominant religion. And their whole, this worldview and cosmology is built through that experience and through this mobility. Different nomadic communities have distinct roles. For example, the Bhat or puppeteer serve as a oral historian. Look in this picture. On one side, you can see different puppets, and another side, a small girl just walking on the road. So the puppeteer, this is the Bhat community, and the girl which is walking on the road, this is Nut community. And the Bhat is work as a oral historian. In the Bhat play, there are 52 puppets, and each puppet represents a particular historical character. And that historical character is coming from the ancient India, from period of Ashoka to modern India, the contemporary time. This is Maharani Lakshmibai. This is a freedom fighter. So that's a 52 character. So it's they adapted new character. And the Nut people in the medieval period, they worked to train the military, king's military, how to use weapons. One community, there's a guardian war, that's task is to make the weapon. And the Nut community is to train those weapons, to military, how to use those weapons, which is created by guardian war or blacksmith. Look in this picture, the Bhat, he just narrate the story about the persons, their character, their contribution in the history. This is another community, there's a bhopa, and their folk instrument known as round hatha. And the person is using that, this is the bhopa, and the actually work is to storytelling. In this picture, this is a cloth, and it's 24-meter long, and some different pictures depicted on that cloth, and that's known as fad. And they recite that fad about different characters or kingdoms or warriors of Rajasthan. So the bhopa is just, with the help of this folk instrument, is exactly the recite of the story about their history, or their warfare, their life. This is Banjara, the woman just showing the embroidery work. This is another nomadic community. This is Raika, the camel herders or pastoralist community. And this is snake charmers or Kalbeliya, work as a healer. We are just considered India as referred to as a land of snake charmers. And in India we are using different names for this snake charmer community, sometimes Sapera, sometimes Sapola, sometimes Kalbeliya, sometimes Madari, and they are the disciples of Guru Gorakhnath. So, and Guru Gorakhnath is a spiritual and social reformer, spiritual leader, social reformer. That's why they consider as sacred. So, snake charmer, their presence is seen like a divine presence. So, if they use the flute or use that voice, so it's considered to be sacred. So they use in the musical healing. So they use different types of healing. For example, music healing, herbal healing, ritualistic healing. They organize feasts, sacrifices, and the Kalbeliya, they have an age-old dance that has been recognized by the UNESCO as World Heritage Dance under the category of intangible cultural heritage. You can see some pictures. This is the Kalbeliya. A snake charmer at Pushkar Fair. In one side, the snake charmer is showing the snakes on bamboo baskets. On another side, the Kalbeliya is sitting on the outskirts of that Pushkar Fair. On one side, it's a surma. On the another side is a oil that they generally use, and they just say ki sadega tel. You can see in this picture, it's a trance and possession on one side, a small girl which is just using that trance, he just taking some bhairuji or their own ancestors or gods, and it's some person just coming and asking their problem, and he just going into trance and give the reply, the region, and the healing. On the another side is a Kalbeliya during the fairy time, he walking to house. The snake charmer data. That's the blacksmith, guardian Luha. Yes. The question is, why do they move? So we have different explanations, theories, or hypotheses about why nomadic communities move. So in this respect, the first theory or the hypothesis is to maximize their productivity. And this theory is coming from the classical economists like Adam Smith or David Ricardo. And the main argument or the main assumptions of this theory is that we have scarce resources and unlimited desires. So we need to allocate those resources in such a way that we to maximize their productivity. If we examine this argument or this theory through their daily routine of particularly snake charmer people, so they hardly work more than 5 hours. The rest of the time they spend their time with their family members and just dancing, singing, drinking, sleeping. So if this is the reason, if this is the reason behind their mobility, because of to maximize their productivity, that's why they are mobile. So that time they should be work more than 8 hours or 10 hours or 12 hours. And the Martian Chalins is also making the same argument, especially for the hunter-gatherers community in Stone Age economics. And Marshall Chalins is making argument that the hunter-gatherers community is actually affluent society and they have limited needs. So that's why they spend much of their time with their family, friends or members, and they enjoy freedom. So they prefer freedom over conjunctions. The second theory in this regard is to combat extreme weather. And this theory, some conservationists or environmentalists, even Nuremberg David and Viswajit Pandya, making this argument. And the argument is, even Nuremberg David and Viswajit Pandya making, it's a strategy to combat extreme weather. That's why nomadic communities move. So nomadism is the product of, or it's a strategy. If this is the strategy, but then why the people, especially the nomadic community or snake charmer, why they move during the monsoon season? If we examine their mobility pattern during different seasons, winter, summer and monsoon. So monsoon is the difficult season to, especially to move, because everywhere you can find the waterlogging and it's hard to find the dry woods for their daily use or campfire or for the cooking. And even animals, they carry the kind of sheep, goats, camels or donkeys. They also are not familiar with those climate conditions. But they regularly move to the next area. Because during rainy season or monsoon, the snake hole is filled up with waters. And the snake come out from that hole and they just want to find some shelter and visit to nearby houses or dry land. And that time, Kalbeliya is just visited to those houses, especially their patrons and other community members, cause that snake and release into the forest area or nearby safe place. So that time, this is the toughest time during monsoon period, but Kalbeliya is working there. And the interesting thing is, he's not taking any money for this activity. So if this is the combat with the extreme weather, so that time the best part was they can just reside at that place for longer period of time, but they continuously or regular they change their movement. In this respect, the next theory is most efficient way to harvest the resources. Nomadism is common among people living in difficult environment. And Salzman make this argument that nomadism is common among people living in difficult like desert area, rainforest and Arctic region. And in those areas, resources are thin and scattered. So the nomadism is efficient way to cater all these resources. And the Rao and Kashmir make the same argument and just Aparna Rao is making, it's a strategy to getting those resources, to making all these resources. But the Kalbeliya, when you ask the question to the Kalbeliya people, state charmer people, is you going to move or you just visit because you want to get that resources? Then they are saying it's a relationship. It's not a deal. We are working for that relationship. A relationship with our pattern, relationship with the snake, relationship with the land, relationship with this nature. And we are following that. And this is not activity, this is not work. This is our sadhana. Sadhana means that we are just considered that work, but they, in their own sense, this is our sadhana. हमने इसे सिद्ध किया है. This is our sadhana and this is coming from our ancestors. This is born from our ancestors. And if we are taking money for that service, so we use the capacity of that boon. We use that sadhana. And we cannot buy the sadhana through that money. So they are making that argument. And in the next theory, nomadism is an ecological adaptation and ideological expression. That's Akbar Ahmed make this argument on the basis of Gomal nomad. The Gomal nomad, the community is between the Afghanistan and Pakistan. But nomads is saying when we can, you ask to the nomads, especially why are you moving here, there, and like this. So saying this is our life. So they don't understand what is ideology and what is ideology not, but they are saying this is our life. When we just move to one place to another place, we are getting strength. We learn Qaida. Qaida means the norms, how to behave in a society. We are getting our knowledge. We are getting that experience through that mobility. This is not we use the words ideology and like this. In next theory, the art of not being governed, James Scott make an argument that these nomadic communities actually do not want to come under control of state. That's why they reside in outskirts of the village of the city, and he just make the name as the Jomia. And Jomia is the area where, and even they do not want to come under control of that social order. But if the person is living in the outskirts of the village or the city, he or she just want to protect their own culture. But that doesn't mean they are not want to interact with the rest of the society. You can see in this picture, is the picture, and the person which is sitting in white clothes, this is a village head, and all the nomadic communities member. And they are just talking to each other, they are saying Apas Gari. So this is the kind of relationship. So they interact and they share their sorrows, their happiness. And especially, for example, the government of India enacted a law in 1972, that's a Wildlife Conservation Act. And according to this act, all the wildlife like snake, monkeys and bears, they just restricted because earlier nomadic communities can catch those animals. But after that Wildlife Conservation Act, no one allowed to catch those animals. And if anyone just find with those animals, so the police just arrest those persons. But during the monsoon season, or especially from June to September, the snakes come out from their hole because the water filled up, and they just get in the shelter in the houses. If the person is just talking to the Kalbeliya or this baby, please catch that snake. So Kalbeliya is saying, no, I cannot catch that snake because if I'm just catching that snake, so police call to me or arrest me. So how is possible? So if you give me some kind of paper or certificate, this person XYZ snake charmer is actually a snake catcher and he can catch snake. So after that I can catch this snake. And the district authority collector just issues a number of letters to the Kalbeliya's people and like the snake catchers. So now they can catch the XYZ Kalbeliya is expert of snake catching activities, and we are authorized that person who can catch the snake and release into the other forest area. So they are negotiate with the state. But James Scott is making that argument, this is a kind of living in the zone. They do not want to interact or come under the control of the state. In the next theories, especially that's coming from the development agency side or government side, the nomads are uneducated, poor, do not understand the fruits of development. If we talk to the nomads, I ask the question to the nomads, particularly the snake charmers people, and they start asking me how many languages you can speak. So I can say I can speak Hindi, I can speak English, I can speak Marwari, and I'm just learning your secret language, it's a Kalbeliya. Then he told me, I can speak my own language, that's a secret language, I can speak Marwari, I can speak Hindi, I can speak Gujarati, I can speak when move to the Madhya Pradesh Malvi, and even if I'm just trying to move to the Maharashtra region, I can speak Marathi. And not just for the snake charmer people. If you talk to the nomadic community, they can speak more than 5 languages. And not just 5 languages, but they understand those 5 languages culture. They know all these cultures. They catch snake very well. They know about the herbal remedies. They know the local environment. They know the relationship or their mobility routes or patterns or the geography. So how can you say I am uneducated person? And if the person is saying you are poor or in the trouble and they don't understand the fruits of development, this is the real problem. You do not want to understand and you are just making the hypothesis that we are in trouble, and that hypothesis created by the NGOs. So they also blame the NGOs if they are making that excuse they are poor people and they reside in that extreme conditions. Because they are saying we are yogis, and yog means to keep moving. So we are follow the traditions, our own belief system. That's why we are moving. In our job, that means you serve the people. So we serve our patterns. That's why we are moving. We are not poor, we are not uneducated. And especially one argument that in last week I just discussed with Professor Sachs, and we discussed on that social theory. Because social theory is focused on structures and systems that shape human society. But they lack the values like freedom, love, joy, happiness, or satisfaction. And the nomadic communities generalize through those values and through these ideals. But social theory just make these are the values and these are the subjective matter. But these emotions and values intrinsically channel the nomadic way of life. But social theories have not recognized these things. So, for the nomads, physical mobility is critical to their health. It brings excitement and anticipation for the new experience. This is not just the movement from place to place, but it is very essential for their own health. The ability to move freely foster a sense of joy and fulfillment. That's essential for their own mental well-being. Mobility provides them with freedom, which is essential for their own healing practices. They use a variety of methods such as herbs, rituals, music, dance, sacrifice, and feast to promote health. And each practice relies on the freedom to experiment and adapt. Mobility enables them to gather diverse herbs from different ecologies and understand their properties. They work on tasing, it's a warming or cooling. And through mobility, they encounter the diverse wildlife snake species when they move from Marwar to Mewar. So they find different types of snake species. And through that encounter, they understand their nature. They understand their healing properties. Nomads maintain their cultural practice, including healing, by setting up their camps on the outskirts. Their healing practice are deeply cultural and sacred, not commoditified, and draw legitimacy from community experience and pattern interactions. To provide the healing practice to the patrons and need mobility. If we lack, that's the Jorana Kalbeliya statement, if we lack the practice, we lose it. This is the boon, vardhan of our ancestors. We have divinity in our practice until we work for our patrons. And this is, they also use the same argument to criticize the doctors or biomedicine. They are saying that if you save someone's life and asking for the money, so it's an ethical and moral crisis. But we are just provide our service and we are not taking any money. But we are happy to take gift. When during just visit to the ferry in the next morning and after 2 days or during the festival season. So they are happy if they just give some food grains, or maybe if somebody is very happy and healed and that time they organize feast, so they donate sheep and goats or sometimes camels. Mobility is our way of life. We are yogis, and yog means to keep moving, to serve patrons, to serve the society, and to improve ourselves through this journey. Life always be in motion. If we stop our mobility, that time we lose it. If we settle that time, we lose our identity. We live like flowing water. Our life is like this. Every day we become new. If stick that time, no rejuvenate happen. So nomadic cosmology that's built around this mobility. And some, or you can say the, nowadays many people just saying the same thing, nomadism is an old phenomena and with no relevance in the modern world. But this is not true. And particularly after the COVID-19 or recession or the disenchanted with the idea of development and consumerism and modernity, and the many nomadic communities people, they are returning to their roots, focusing more on gardening, healing practice and herbal remedies, particularly after the COVID-19 pandemic. And they using new changes, for example, they use motorbike or tempos along with donkeys for the movement of their data. They also use resort activities like Kalbeliya people, they women just going for the dance and they showing their healing session in their resorts. And they use snake catching. So earlier the identity was snake catchers, and now the identity is snake charmers to snake catching. And the one thing that I noticed, earlier they just going for the long route migration. The mobility is from Rajasthan to Odisha or to Bengal, from west side to east. But now they are using more circular flow, and that's increase their diameter, especially the frequency. In they also adapt new activity and new routes, new patronages. Unlike biomedicine, they criticize the biomedicine on, because biomedicine is based on that reductionist approach. If you face any problem in your body, so you just visit to the doctor and doctor diagnose and they give you some medicine. So first society to person, person to organ, organ to tissue, tissue to cell, and he just find out the problem and give the medicine. That's it. But nomads are saying, is it, if you face any problem, is it not because you have some physical problem, but maybe because of your family relations, or because of your ancestors, because of your surroundings, or because of your nature. So all things they consider. So it's a holistic approach. And the biomedicine is reductionist. That's why they criticize you on one side is a reductionist, is make the person is an object, and the second argument is especially for the money mind. And they are saying that the aim of these healing practices is not just to cure the body, but to restore harmony within the individual and between the person and their surroundings. This approach addresses emotional, spiritual and social needs that biomedicine tends to overlook. So mobility and kinship. The kinship is depends on practice, not on belief. And in Kalbeliya community, during the mobility, the main position is Patel, and Patel is the head of that dera. But this is not hereditary position. They always, when they migrate from a new route or they just going for the different seasons, so they take that position, they just select among these community members who is knowledgeable person, who know how they move in that particular area. So that Patel positions is depends on their pattern understanding, their mobility routes, and whether the person know these interactions very well. Because all the safety, security, where they find that water and the data will move, the safety and security rest of the Patel's decision, the entire data follow his instructions. But during that journey, they make new relationship like Dharam Bhai or Dharam Bahan, sometimes own father. If they find some patterns, they help for the nomads and they just make the kind of friendship. So they make new connections, new relationships in like this. And the core father, I find this is the new thing that maybe the Dharam Bhai and Dharam Bahan, the brother and the sisters, we can find in other the settlers community, but especially the core father. And they also change the Syria and Gunia. Gunia is the person who is the expert of healing practices in Kalbeliya dera. But when they move, for example, first they move in during the summer season in desert side, in winter season in forest Madhya Pradesh side, in monsoon season towards Haryana side. If the person is expert in particular forest healing, forest herbs, he know where they can find those herbs and their property and their healing stuff. So that time the different person we just recruited as the Gunia. But for the desert, some other person expert on those herbs, so he will be the next Gunia in that area. So that position is also changes or depends on their own understandings. Yes, so I think my goal is
So does anyone have some questions or comments? Yes, please.
A lovely presentation. Thank you very much. I have a question about kinship structures. So, to what extent are the roles within these nomadic groups gendered? So, for example, like the snake catchers or the healers.
Yes, particularly in case of snake charmers, or you can say the Kalbeliya community, all the countries they run through that women. And in last lecture, I mentioned especially their marriage tradition. Through marriage tradition, you can identify the role of the particular women. The women is the final or sole authority who decide when and with whom she is going to be married. And before marriage, it's a chalan, it's a tradition in Kalbeliya. The male is to showing their own the abilities, whether he can catch the snake or not, whether he can understand those healing practice or not. He know their pattern or whether the mobility routes and all these aspects. So the women is the final authority. They also take part in the healing practice, especially if you see in this picture. This is the girl in this picture. This actually the, I think, the 10 or 12 years old girl. And the women is also authorized to catch the snake. They also authorized to heal the person, especially the scorpion bite or snake bite, whether we believe or not, but actually in the desert area that's functioning and the people believe on their healing practice. And they also know about especially their traditions and songs, and Kalbeliya is also famous, especially the snake charmer, for their years-old dance. So it's all things is decided by the women in the Kalbeliya data.
Yeah, thank you, Ashwani. I have a couple of questions in the comments. So the questions are, one is, when you were saying that they go and save the snakes during the monsoons, right?
Yes.
Which go out, and you said that they were doing it as a, not as a paid service, but just like a duty. It was called sadhana, you call it, right? Sadhana. Sadhana. Yeah, that's how I understand the duty, right? To do that.
Yes.
Can you maybe say a bit more about how do they understand this sadhana? Is it related to the snakes that they owe this service to? Like, is it a duty in front of the snakes or in front of the society? Save the society from the snakes, or everyone from everyone? Like, how do they see these relations within the sadhana themselves?
Yes. The sadhana, as I'm just understanding this, it's a sacred nature, it's divine nature. That's the process. And this is not only in case of to catch the snake or to heal the person, but also especially for their rituals during herbal healing. They just taking the herbs, and before they to practice those herbs or to use those herbs and to organize rituals. Before using the herbs, they organize different rituals, and they are saying कि हमने इसको सिद्ध किया है. That's in their own language, and they're using different chants and different mantras, and through that mantras they are saying and they believing that through our ancestors we are getting some special power or boon or vardhan. So that boon comes, and after that it's just make kind of living. So they treat herbs as a living beings.
And with the snakes as well, they so in, for instance, in saving the snakes.
Yes, and snake is they consider as their East Dev. Is because it's a disciple also Guru Gorakhnath, and Guru Gorakhnath is just the kind of representative. The snake is the representative of that Guru Gorakhnath.
Okay. The other question I had is about, there was an interesting element about the bureaucrats, right, which you mentioned, who give the licenses for them to save, to catch the snakes. And if I get it right, they do it, they kind of bypass the standard procedures. So it seems like there is, there's like the bureaucracy, the logical bureaucracy is try to secure itself from being abused, right? From people cheating the rules and making some corruption, whatever, systems. So like ideally the bureaucracy tries to control the people and really doesn't trust people, right? But here it seems like in these relations there is a big amount of trust that they give these licenses unofficially maybe, but they trust the community that they will not abuse this kind of trust. Can you tell something about these relations between them and the bureaucratic systems?
Yes, I think this is the middle path, because on one side, in their own caste panchayat, in Kalbeliya's caste panchayat, they declares that no one can carry the snake more than 21 days. This is their caste rule. So the Kalbeliya understand, we cannot understand that this snake is just they are living for the 20 days or 18 days or with these Kalbeliya particular communities. But they understand through their French. In the second time the French is just coming, so they understand
through their what?
especially on the fence. Yes, their fence. So through that they understand whether the snake is 21 years old, more than this person in under captivity, or less than 21 days. If the person is taking more than 21 days, so they organize the caste panchayat and they outcasted that people. So they are very scared of that thing. So before 21 days, they just release that snake and they just find another snake.
So there is the internal community control over it
Yes.
because they're afraid that they will ruin the trust and
Yes.
it will ruin their
Yes.
relations with the bureaucracy.
Yes. And last time, I think yesterday, we discussed especially the biggest punishment is sadi gadar. If you are just going to be untruth things, if you are going to be kisi ko jhoot bola, so they are saying sadi. And this is the biggest crime in their own internal communities, not looking to outsider, but in their internal matters.
Lying, you say,
Yes,
lying,
lying.
telling an
Yes.
untruth inside
Yes.
of the other is the biggest crime.
Thank you. And just a comment also had, just thinking about how you were describing the relations of these nomads with the people around, if I get you right, when you said they speak so many languages and they go to the communities and they talk
Yes.
with them with their own languages and they really understand the culture behind it and so
Yes.
on. So my thought was that actually maybe this can serve as a really good illustration of a distinction between ontologists and epistemologists, which is like the eternal argument, right? Whether it's about the culture or a way of being. Because here, one way to explain it is that they use the ontology, the way of being in the desert,
Yes.
as a way to connect with different epistemologies, to translate into different cultures. They do not drive their relations with the people into some neutral zone, like it's usually done in the capitalist systems, turning everything into money. It's kind of neutral territory where everyone is equal and everyone's kind of freed from the cultural context, right? But as you say, they prefer gift relations, for instance, instead of commercial relations, right?
Yes.
And the gift relations is a way to translate the bind into different cultural contexts where it does not get equaled on a one neutral kind of exchange basis, but it's always a personal relation with different culture, just like the language itself, right? So I was really interested in this translation element. Seems to be a very integral to their way of being as well, that they constantly have to translate between different communities and it must be connected with their way of being in the desert.
I would like to intervene with that question because it sort of affects my question too. It's kind of long. There are two parts to my question. And it has to do with sadhana and movement, but in relation to what Igor said. First of all, you told us last year in our doctoral code, when you said that they referred to their movement as sadhana, and you didn't explain to the audience, but of course not everyone knows Indian language. Sadhana is a term that means something like spiritual discipline, typically in Hindi. So to do sadhana, it can refer to other things too, but usually the thing is, my sadhana means I pray, I get up at 5 o'clock every morning and I pray and I take a bath and I do my yoga and so forth. This is sadhana, my spiritual discipline. So it's interesting that these people refer to their movement as sadhana. We were talking about that, and then you had said also in particular they relate this to their healing practice, their sadhana. And I'm still hoping that you will tell us something somehow a bit more profound about how that works, what Igor is calling an ontology. What you did was give us a list. Healing does this, it does that, it does this, it does that, it does this, it does that, a long list of as if they were still looking for some functional, we can get this advantage and this advantage and this advantage, we know the version, and of course I believe all of that, but I'm still hoping that there would be something a bit more profound than simply they have a list of advantages they get by moving. And isn't there more to it than that? Isn't it rather, you said the way of being. I mean, here you have people whose way of being is significantly different from all those around them, and in that they are constantly on the move. And so I was sort of, and the word you used for that, you also used the word ferra, which means feri, it means to circulate. So feri means circulation, so I'm still hoping there's got to be more to it than simply a kind of rational calculation that by moving they can have a lot of advantages. Doesn't it go deeper than that? And doesn't this going deeper have something to do with sadhana or spiritual discipline and movement?
Yes, as I hope that especially if we talk to those persons, how do we find that sadhana and what if you are saying many specific, this is my sadhana, and I cannot.
My Siddhi means I perfected this.
Yeah, perfected this.
Through my sadhana.
Yes, and when I just asked why don't you take money to snake catching activity, why are you just playing flute, just sitting on the crossroads and you're sitting on the chabutra, especially Guru Gorak now, they are saying the dhunis, and without expecting any money. Why are you doing such thing? That time we saying, this is our boon from our ancestors, and this is our relationship with that ancestors, and they giving the boon on this promise, we are not taking money for that work. So exactly this is not the, as I mentioned that work and all this, so this is not work, ये काम नहीं है, this is my sadhana, and this is coming from my ancestors, and I'm just using this sadhana for to cure or to serve the people. So in this agreement, you serve the people, so you will get some special the healing property or some healing quality or some healing power. So I think that power they consider to be as sadhana. So it's a second meaning, it's divine meaning.
And you also said, you mentioned it briefly today, that it's used, the word deal is good, it's not a soda.
Yes.
So you have this term in Hindi, soda, sodagar is a merchant,
Yes.
right? So,
Deal means that in economic terms, you are doing something for me, I will do something.
cash for payment.
Yes.
So soda involves payment. But
Yes.
you used that it's not soda, it's
Rista.
rishta, a relationship,
Relations.
a kin relationship.
Yes.
Which I think, this is all, I mean, I think you could go a lot further with this, right? It's not, I don't do this work playing the flute or healing the client as a soda, as a deal, cash for payment. I do it because of my rishta, which is the term for kin, relationship.
Yes. And they had.
But, what kind of a rishta? I mean, the relationship is the relationship of a patron and a client, a judgment, right?
Yeah, judgment, but when we understand the judgment in terms of economy, they also accept the money, but as a gift, but not as a service to give the money for their service. This is not like that. For example, as in great transformation, we make on that happen, especially in embeddedness. So it is not, we cannot differentiate this is economic activity, this is cultural activity, or this is something purely political activity. But all are just the kind of amalgamations. So the economy is also the part of that cultural stuff. So if they going to transact that cultural thing, so economy embedded in that cultural stuff. So it is not purely separate. This is the key for this.
I had one other old question also about kinship. If I can read my own notes here. You said something in the middle of your presentation when you were talking about kinship. You said it depends on practices and not on beliefs. What exactly did you mean by that?
That practice is, the belief is the, especially through our theoretical framework or when we just start to reading sociology, anthropology. So they say this is a male, this is a female, this is their offspring, one, offspring two, like these structures. And we understand kinship through that. But we see the practice through the Kalbeliya. How to make cold father.
Okay.
Cold father. Cold father is they just take this person, oh, now you are my cold father. You have just visited to that area and you are just doing something good for that area or for the community, and we are making that relationship. And that time we use now you are cold father. हमने आपको cold father बना दिया. Cold means the word for their internal, especially their indigenous communities, their sacred language. But father is like Pita. So the father is the same as we are just using for our own father. So they are considered that person as a father. And the respected same, the relationship is going on the same. As the father's duty, so the person is going to perform that duty. If they are considered that brother, so what a role in that community or society, the brother's role, they perform the same role. So that's the practice. This is not the structure or this is not on the belief system side. If the next time they go into another area, maybe they find something else or they just make some other relationships. Like Syria, they decide other Bunia, other Dharam Bahen, Dharam Bhai.
I don't know, this is what what anthropologists call fictive kinship, or it's a metaphorical kinship. When I was baptized, someone came and stood as a witness, and that's my godfather. We have terms for that in all European languages. All of the Christian communities have the person who is the witness to the child's baptism. And in many places, your relationship with that person is continued for the rest of your life. And you recognize them and you respect them, just as you say. So I would say, this is a matter of belief and practice. I believe, I'm not sure, belief.
Is the practice, until they are just practice that relation, they just visiting and they're coming, so they are just...
I think the classical anthropologists have made a lot of kinship. So tradition, they would say, there's a structure of relationships here, and we can understand the kinship system in terms of structure. No one ever talks much about belief. And I'm just trying to get to you're saying something distinct, you're saying there's something distinctive here. It's not belief, you said, I think you probably want to say it's not structure, but it's rather practice. But the anthropologists too, in the classical structure of kinship systems, we're looking at both. Why should it not be a matter of belief or structure?
Because they are not focused on particular that the relationship, even the person is just like the Patel is someone different, and he just like that person, and you are the co-father or the rabbi or the man. But in the next time or the next year, maybe the Patel is someone else, and he's not consider that person as that co-father or the rabbi or the man. So it's not a matter of belief or structure, but it's a matter of practice. So next time he's just taking another person as that position.
So I have two questions. One is, it's a bit of a question that sort of boxes. Yeah, I also don't, but I still would be interested. So the first question is, you said sometime in the beginning they have an own view of religion in addition to,
Yes.
let's say, a Hindu, Sikh, Muslim, etc. practice. So the own view of religion, is that something that what anthropologists call animism? Is that something what you mean, or what is exactly the own view? Or is the own view the characteristic, is the crossover, the hybrid syncretic, as you call it, between those, or is that something what could be described as animist?
The syncretic in aspect they make, firstly there's Ajiparaji, they use the words Ajiparaji for their ancestors. So they consider that they are the superior to all the religions and all these other powers in this nature. So they consider that Ajiparaji. Second,
These are ancestors.
yes, they're
These are
ancestors.
spirits, I guess.
Yes.
You want to say, okay.
Yes, the spirits. But the spirits, in their own sense, they just come time to time. For example, when they visit to some sacred site on their burial sites, so they are getting the power from that dunes or from that sacred site. So that time exactly their spirits came. So in their own understanding, especially the nomads. So they are consider their ancestors Ajiparaji as the supreme. So in their own religion, they are doing all these activities through the name of those ancestors.
But is it like, it's maybe in the desired box to call it animism, but I'm not sure.
Well, to follow that up, please continue with your second, but just to stick to that first question.
Let's stick to that.
You seem to be suggesting that there's highly developed ancestors. Hindus are famous for not having much of an ancestral cult. Ancestral depth is only 3 generations. Of course, there are other rituals to the ancestors. It's not as if they're absent, but neither is it so very common. Like, you seem to be suggesting that these people share an ancestor cult which is much more developed than their Hindu and Muslim neighbors. Is that right? And what else would that consist of, other than a set of beliefs about the importance of what exactly would this cult?
Particularly especially in other cultures, we are considering in Hinduism and other our ancestors, as you mentioned, until 3 generations, they just accept their presence. But in nomads, they are not considered, especially their ancestor Ajay Paraje, they include all the persons as they just passed away. This is not just 1, 2 or 3 or 4 generations, but they throw out from their Guru Gorakhnath, they just start from all these things for the ancestor from the Guru Gorakhnath. So they are including all these generations. And
That's like the Pitras. All of your Pitra will include all of your previous generations too.
but in Pitra, sir, we are just take care of that, as you mentioned, there's 3 generations. So we are not counted as the more than 3 because we are saying it's a Parda, especially. Yeah, after 3 generation is a Parda. It's a kind of, you are using something that's high. So you cannot just preach after 3 generations, particularly in Hindu. In my cultures, we are not going to preach after 3 generations. So it's maybe it's a high, we are not going to consider those persons.
Right, so what, is there more to this ancestor cult than the term Ajay Paraje?
Yes, and Ajay Paraje, you are just from their starting, their beginning time. They don't know the when the beginning is start, but they are considered from our, that's the Kalbeliya generation start. So they consider from that time. So they, Guru Gorakhnath, they is the kind of the point where they start, he as a disciple from the Guru Gorakhnath. So he is the main ancestor.
But do they do particular rituals for them?
Yes.
They
Sacrifice for their every rituals they start to sheep and goats on their hands. They just sacrifice and first to give the sawa bottle dahu, that's 1.5, that's a bottle liquor to their ancestors. And that's a Buddha what their ancestors is like, so the chicken or mutton and liquor. So
it's a bit like Central Indian Adivasis, I would say. Sounds a bit like also this. But they don't have to tend me clans, I guess, right?
yes.
They don't have, no? So the second question I have is this overarching question of mobility, which you posed in the beginning. I would just, I think I understood what you aimed at with your presentation, that it's more mobility encompasses more than physical mobility. But what is that overarching, like I was saying, overarching, what is that mobility? What does it encompass? Because what is the central place of mobility?
I think in their own sense, when you ask the especially the mobility, so they are saying the old philosophy कि हम घाट घाट का पानी पीने वाले लोग हैं. We the person who migrate to culture, and घाट represent a particular culture. So they are not using the Gumantu or movement or mobility, but they are saying कि हम घाट घाट का पानी पीने वाले लोग हैं. So they exactly represent the
But
culture.
what this means in Hindi is we go
Yes.
from water place to watering place. From water to water, from God to God. We are the ones who go from this watering place to that watering place.
But it's a घाट represent a particular culture.
But it's a metaphor here for
Yes.
the cultures.
So they are using the word for the culture. So they are not using that movement or mobility and like this, and they are saying कि we are getting the joy during that to ghat ghat, and we are using the excitement during that journey. We are getting the strength, or you can say the physical strength during this mobility, during this journey. So it's a kind of journey to fulfilling and enriching journey.
Okay, but is that then, but now you're talking again about the physical mobility. What is there? I just put now the words in your mouth, but is there semantic flexibility? Is there cultural, social flexibility? I saw all these. I just wanted to know, because you put this as the overarching theme, and I think it can be very productive to extend it beyond physical mobility. So I really agree with you. I would just like to be interested, what are the other forms of mobility? You, like little bit, I can also put it what I extracted out, but I would just like to hear it from you.
So mobility in which sense?
Yeah, in which sense then physical? You said it encompasses more than physical mobility. What is the
Yes,
more than?
The more than that's, they are just consider the mobility as a sacred aspect. It is not just physical. For example, they just migrate from place to place. So they are getting we are yogis, for example, in case of snake charmers, and we are getting that how can we say, especially the yogi during to serve the people. So the mobility, but during the physical movement, you are not going to serve the people, but through your presence or through your, we are getting sambal. Sambal means that some, we can say the atman or self improvement. So we are getting through that self improvement, through that mobility, because we are yogis. So this is the second aspect. This is not the physical movement.
I think I understand it now. He said this to me the other day too. So we are the people who move from place to place, from culture to culture. And you might think, oh, well, this is just a physical description of what they do. They move from place to place. But what you're saying is that when they elaborate on this to you, they emphasize they have joy and strength. Like it's not just movement, it's something that is very much more than that they're getting strength and knowledge and joy. So it's kind of emotion, the movement is
Effective,
yeah,
it's sacred, or
fulfilling, they're
religious.
reaching their potential, they're growing, it's all extremely positive and healthy
It's
and
social
full
as
and
well.
everything. But
It's
then you call
hunting.
that sacred, but as Philip said, it sounds like, it's still a physical, it's good for them, it makes them healthy. And you keep repeating this sentence, so obviously it's very important. We are the people who move from culture to culture, and this strengthens and enriches us somehow.
Because they
Well, that's what I'm getting from your.
Yes, because they also using there, for example, they have the second use. They are saying, okay, this is the burial site for our sisters, and this is the second use. And
Sacred what?
second dunes,
Dunes.
especially in desert area. And they migrate from that one dunes to another dunes, especially some other ancestor. Okay, this is sacred, this is divine, this is for our, particularly they use the name for their ancestors, okay, ex-Nath dunes or Plana Nath dunes. So through that mobility, they are saying we are getting that sacredness, and we are getting the same as we have mentioned that the boon from our ancestors when we visited to those places. So during their journey, they are not just mobile to that area only or to serve the people, but they also just visited to that place. So in that aspect, they also taking that sacredness.
I was thinking of the mobility also when we were asking about the patel, the shifting
Yes.
leadership, the kinship, the new relationships and alliances, the gunya, the healer,
Yes.
shifting, all is in kind of sort of in flux, it seems to be. Like the social positions are in flux, etc. So I was thinking that mobility is for sure here like the central theme that you identified now, and how much it can be kind of really applied to a lot of the other aspects of their
Yes.
life. So I'm more agreeing with you, but I'm just trying to kind of a little bit get that out and what ties it together, because I can see this this theme emerging, and I'm also trying to understand the nomadic community I've been working with in Pakistan, which have been settled. So where the mobility is not the same as for these communities anymore, but still being musicians, they move temporarily. Now they want to move to India. So it's like some others do migrant labor in Dubai. So etc. So they have the mobility is still a big theme for them.
They're talking on Meanwhile.
Yeah, but mobility, what I mean, is still central in some way.
Yes.
I think so. It's I find it interesting. It's just trying to transfer this as well. But yeah, thanks.
I think cosmology is central. I think that's the even after if you find some person who is just going to settle down, but their cosmology or their understanding or their worldview somehow the same.
Yeah, I think it remains then.
Yeah, I have two questions actually. The first I could directly connect with what you said about cosmology. So I was wondering if movement when you connect this just with the fact of being on the move or moving your body, it could be a container concept of space or room, but it seems that what you mean is more a structured cosmology with places of ancestors that people get in touch with. Is that what you mean? In the societies I'm familiar with, who are all developing or performing ancestor worship, the space is always, and the place is very important. So the place is, you basically don't move yourself just for the sake of moving, but you connect places and you connect yourself with special places. And I wonder if that connects perhaps to what you call cosmology. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yes, absolutely right. And during my first line, I mentioned that when we are saying they migrate from place to place, so this mobility is not arbitrary, but this mobility is kind of systematic. Systematic in the sense that they know their pattern, and their mobility routes, all these economic and political factors with the resources. They also know we also need to beat our ancestors, so that the space in that aspect, in the structure, they know where is the dunes and where is the, especially in Malwa regions in the forest area. So I buried my mother or the father. So after 1 year or 6 months or 2 years, when we going to that site, so we should spend at least 1 day at that place.
So it's basically like song lines in Australia.
Yes.
Yeah. And the other question is, what is the role of money or cash after all? When you emphasize very much that money doesn't play a role and it's more about relationships and so forth, it's always fascinating to imagine societies that stand outside of the cash cycle in a capitalist world order. So, do they even have money? And if so, what do they use it for?
Especially it's basically a moral economy. Sometimes we think that the economy is the same economy, but they are more worth of this moral economy if they are provide their sadhana or service to the other community. So they are happy to get the money, but in terms of particularly in Marwar region, desert area, they are getting the food grains, because food grains have two meanings. One is not just for their service, but also because they consider as joy, not joy. So, and the people feel that even in Hinduism and our own philosophy, if you give the foods to the other person or food grains, that give you some good things or some goodness in your life. And they also happy to get that food grains, sometimes the goat or sheep as a gift. And they also accept in modern times the money for, especially for those services for those work as well. But it's very, in present time, I think there's a very limited role, especially with money. Because they are saying that the first principle is this land is just for all the people. This is not for my land and your land. This is all principle. So the productivity or all the production should be divided equal among all the person. So whenever we visit to our ancestor, our patrons and other person, so we will get our shares. So I think that in that aspects they are not more depends on that money side.
Yeah, I get that, but still, if money plays a role, it is used for something. And my question is simply, what do they use it for, if they have it?
So, especially they are, for example, as in their data, you can see the people, they have some basic needs, like some basic stuff in their hand. And mostly, if you understand and live with those communities, so you find that they are not going to buy anything specially. They are taking especially something from their patterns, or maybe someone, for example, nowadays the NGO just visited and they just to give some, provide something. So it's hard to buy anything, but one thing they are just going to buy more and more. That's the big one, or especially to organize the feast or to buy the hens and sheep and goats. So because they do not have any bank account, even in the Snake Charmer community, they do not have any Aadhaar card, any proof. Because if you have permanent settlement, after that you are entitled to get all these government documents. And after permanent settlement, you will have entitled to make your bank account. So that time there is no role of that extra money or in that. Maybe some cash in that sense.
You said there was something they did buy, what was it, they could, they use money, what do they use? Again,
Liquor.
liquor. Otherwise, you're saying they just simply don't use their money from us. They get their material objects as gifts from their Yajman.
Yes, they more focus on, they hardly work more than 5 hours in a day. So they more focus on dancing, singing, drinking, talking to their own family members. So they are involved in those activities. So they are not focused on that money side.
Yeah, that was actually a third question, if I may. Because, I mean, this sounds like an illustration of Marshall Sahling's classic text, like 5 hours, that's it, nobody works more. Actually has been criticized for that because he left completely out the work of women and children and kind of stuff that wasn't seen as productive work. And I was wondering, what's the distribution of work here in this regard? It seems to be a very equal society, gender equal,
Yes.
and how is, for example, childcare, cooking, providing for water or wood for fire, how is that organized?
In Snake Charmer community, all things decided by the women, not by the men. And to cooking is not the women task, this is the male task.
Okay.
And especially the child rearing is not a single person's the task, but it's a whole data. So the child is not the property of their mother and father, but the child is the property of the whole the data, the 8 or 10 family. So their all the upbringingness is just on the same level. If they have resources, so that they kind of equal distribution. So it is not the if someone have more or someone has less. And especially they are celebrated like the Mundan, when they just first time they're here. So they celebrate at bigger level. So they during the summer when they make the pathari means when they collect all these data because the field is after harvesting, so the field is completely open. So hundreds or 200 data they just all at one place, and they celebrate all the mundans in those data, maybe 10 or 20 or 15 the children.
The first haircutting of the infant.
What would happen, like now there are Joginath, Kalbeliya known to be dancers, female dancers exclusively, who work with other communities. So, and also for other communities I've worked with Mangania, they are only male performers.
Yes.
Very patriarchal to their own women, by the way. So here, these male performers have their relationship to their patrons has changed. Largely, they don't perform anymore for so much for the patrons. They do it sometimes, so on the side. They don't do it for crops, that like in your case, as you say, but they do it for money. So now these, and they do professional performances for money along with Kalbeliya dancers to make it more whatever attractive. So what happens now when these women suddenly become like small stars or get a lot of money? So what would be the sort of like, would there be conflicts, or would she just then give the money into the community, or would she live alone, or like what would be the anti-structure element in this?
Now they, as I wrote in the abstract as well, now they are disenchanted with these resorts or these dance activities, because earlier during I think 4, 5 or 6 years back, when the resort culture is just flourished in the desert area, that time they got handsome amount from their resorts, but just only for the winter season in the desert during December, January or mid-February, this 2.5 months. But that time they lose that pattern and that relation. So they are more spending time in the that resorts, and they left those mobility routes and that patterns. So what happened? because when you provide maybe work or sadhana or service to the pattern, so the patterns also take care of you for the whole year, not just for the 1 month or 2 months. But when you are disconnect with your patterns, so that time actually you are more vulnerable, because they are just depend on the resort, and resort work is just only for 2.5 months. And now, so that's why they are just disenchanted with this resort activity than a dance. And the person who's getting money, maybe the 2.5 months he just worked and living outside their family and the data. But as we mentioned earlier, that specialty, their cosmology is also built on that mobility. So they enjoy freedom. They are not structurally that especially to live in that house or in the city or in the even the village. So they enjoy that freedom. So that's why they do not like to live even in the resort culture or in that. So now the people are disenchanted. Or second point is because for the demand of the external especially the tourists, so they change their dance movement, or as you mentioned, because the Mahaniyar is saying you use that step or those steps, but their original step is something different. So they also disenchanted with these changes.
Yeah, it's very similar to the stuff that Hornbacher discovered in the Balinese dance with the influx of tourism in the Balinese, trying to make a distinction between sacred dances, which would be continued in temples, and touristic dances for the tourists.
The difference is here also, like the one group I know, these performers, they perform now throughout the year. I mean, of course, there's a wedding season, that's true, but they're not only exclusively at weddings, so they try to perform whenever they can. Like, and this is then also anti-cyclical even to the tourist season in some extent, not totally probably. I guess in summer there's less because it's just hotter, there's less parties, but I mean, what I just mean is like they kind of like there's a real profound transformation to being dependent on the market.
Yeah, well, that's what he's calling disenchantment.
Earlier it was a sacred activity. The dance they considered a sacred activity, but now it's purely on profane basis. So that's the reason behind this disenchantment.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your questions and discussions and for this very interesting paper again. And we have to ask Frau Nagels to tell us when the next person is.
It's in 2 weeks, December 10, Florian Besch.
December 10th, Florian Besch, also a former doctoral student who's left the academy, and he's talking about what he did after his university training in medical anthropology. He's become a very successful personal advisor for people in the community, and he was probably the most popular teacher ever in this department. He's a fantastic teacher. We'll be talking about that transition out down the ivory tower. And thank you very much. See you again in 2 weeks.